to Fullerton Avenue on the north side of town. At the end of those 36 hours, 300 people had been killed. 100,000 people, a third of the city, was left homeless by the fire, and 3 square miles of the city was burned to rubble. Now, you might have noticed from my description that the fire crossed the river. Chicagoans assumed that the river would protect the east side of town, but to the shock and horror of residents, as the fire reached the river, it was so big and hot that the heat provided updraft enough to blow burning chunks of wood over the river, continuing the flames on the other side. Now, 100,000 people, a third of the city, was left homeless by the Great Fire. Yet we recovered so quickly that 20 years later we were hosting the World's Columbian Exposition. The reason that we recovered so quickly is that most of those 100,000 surviving victims, the ones who lost everything but survived, stayed here in Chicago. Very few of them moved away because most of them were immigrants with no real connections to other parts of the country. And so they were determined to rebuild their lives here in Chicago. They had work to build for themselves where they would still know their neighbors and communities. Now, about Mrs. O'Leary and her cow. The O'Learys were real people. They had 4 real cows in a real barn. And their barn really was the first building on fire that night. But the story blaming the fire on Mrs. O'Leary was invented by a reporter while the flames were still burning, knowing that scapegoating an Irish immigrant family like them would take advantage of anti-immigrant prejudice at the time and take sell a lot of papers. Now you might think, well, Bobby, that sounds cruel, but didn't you just tell us that the fire really started at the O'Leary's real barn? So why isn't it really their fault? Well, because the fire started at the O'Leary's property, the O'Learys were officially investigated, and the investigation found no evidence to blame them, citing that Chicago was a dry, wooden city that had suffered through 2 months of drought. Anything as simple as a passerby with a pipe accidentally dropping a match, or just a passerby dropping a lantern outside could have started the fire. We simply do not know, still today, what started the Great Fire, and the O'Learys, even back then, were investigated, exonerated, and have always been as likely as anyone to be innocent. Now,